There's a lot of real benefits for women and for pretty much anyone with hormonal issues doing coffee enemas. And that's a really surprising one for most people. Women going through perimenopause, menopause, fertility struggles, all of this stuff comes down to the liver and the toxins in our body. And, most of them have been spraying on spray Dove deodorant since they were, 13 and bathing in those toxic body products and cooking on nonstick pans and, wearing perfume and the makeup and then going into work where there's, an air freshener that's blasting Febreze all day, and they don't realize that all of those little things over time are now impacting their liver and their overall toxic load and now their reproductive hormones.
Hi, my dear friends. What if one of the most powerful tools for clarity, energy, and healing goes in through the back door? In today's episode, I welcome the vibrant and wisdom-packed Kyah Seary from Happy Bumco, a woman who turned a life-altering health crisis into a global mission to get us talking and laughing about gut health, detox, and why your liver might need a little extra love. From enemas to emotional healing, from ancient traditions to modern wellness hacks, this conversation dives into the often misunderstood territory of what it really means to cleanse from the inside out. Over the next hour, Kyah walks me through what she experienced from turbocharging the liver, boosting glutathione production, and transforming gut health. I'll share my own high vibe experiences and why this practice deserves a spot on your self-care toolkit. But before we get started, it would mean the world if you would follow or subscribe on the platform you're listening on. Your engagement fuels us. And now, let's get into it. Oh, Kyah Seary, it's so nice to be here with you. I love seeing your face. The first time we met, we were at the Spa Wellness Awards, and I got to sit next to you and your beautiful little baby. Oh, such good memories. I wanted to start us off with a question around why someone would want, especially somebody new to this area of conversation, why would I want to lay on the floor and hang a tube of coffee and insert and fill myself with coffee from the rear end?
Geez, Damian, I am so glad you asked that. I think that is one of our initial bonding moments at the Spa and Wellness Awards, was sharing our mutual love for coffee enemas. And the answer to that is it's so actually complex, because there are so many reasons why you might want to lie on the floor and put your morning cuppa up the other way. And what it boils down to is essentially supporting enhanced liver detoxification, the gut, and your overall toxic load, which is so imperative to your overall health and well-being. And coffee enemas are the ultimate way to help support this natural liver detoxification, boost your glutathione levels, and also really get whatever needs to come out of the body out in a really easy, safe, and I guess comfortable way. It's not scary once you've done it, and it's a really important part of a wellness routine and detox protocol. So coffee enemas have so many different benefits, and it always amazes me the different reasons people come and say, start doing coffee enemas, because there's so many different reasons. People are coming with hormonal issues, with chronic fatigue, with parasites, with constipation, gut issues, with cancer. And the coffee enema is this crucial healing tool for all of those things.
Wow. And I was connecting with all the bits that you said there. There was so much goodness in there. And what are the main differences between, say, like a saline enema, and why would somebody just do that versus coffee? How much of that is attributed just to doing an enema?
Well, enemas are an ancient practice. So every traditional culture has medical records that show the use of enemas for colon clearing. So first and foremost, any enema that you do is going to be beneficial because it's going to clear out the lower colon, which is your waste tract of the body. Think of it like bin day for your body. We need to be able to remove the toxic waste. And especially in our culture today, that's becoming harder and harder with the add-ons of the processed food, poor diet, heightened stress levels, lack of movement, sedentary lifestyles. So first and foremost, any enema can be beneficial just because of its detox implications for the stool and the colon. But where the magic happens in a coffee enema versus any other kind of enema is the caffeine in the coffee that stimulates the glutathione production. So glutathione is your body's master antioxidant detoxifier. So glutathione is present in every single cell of your body, and it helps us to combat free radical cells, which can be cancer cells. It can help remove heavy metals from the body. It can help us combat oxidative stress from chemical exposure, from emotional stress, whatever it is that our body is fighting off. So when we do a coffee enema and we let the solution come into our body and we hold for 10 to 15 minutes, during that time, your body actually produces 600 to 700 times its normal glutathione antioxidant production.
Wow. Amazing.
So very different as well from just taking a supplement. So we're very familiar with adding things into our body that, come from a different source. But one of the really amazing things about coffee enemas is it's actually a reaction that happens inside your body to produce your own added glutathione, which is so powerful. And then,
Because
of
you can
course,
create dependence the other way, can't you? With
yeah.
glutathione, you don't want to take too much of it orally.
And if you can allow your body to do something itself, that's always going to be more powerful. Plus, when you do a coffee enema, you're also stimulating your liver bile ducts to basically dilate. You're stimulating bile flow, and bile is what carries toxins out of the body. And then because we're doing this in such a manual way, after you hold that coffee enema for the 10 to 15 minutes, you sit on the toilet and all of the toxicity that you have literally just stirred up in your body comes out then and there. So it's pretty powerful and it's very fast acting, which is another reason I love coffee enemas, because people can see dramatic results quickly. They can get instant relief. And as we know, the gut and the brain and your overall health are so connected. So although you might start a coffee enema for one reason, you might get all of these other flow-on benefits that you weren't expecting simply by enhancing your liver detoxification and getting all this extra junk out of your body.
And you mentioned that caffeine was the active kind of ingredients that was creating this stimulus. Now, I don't know this for sure, and I've only had a couple of magical experiences with coffee enemas. Looking forward to your visit and to another experience. But I think I remember them saying that they were using coffee grinds that had already been brewed, which made me think that there was some other active ingredient, because I don't think they were, in that particular case, they weren't using actual just like brewed coffee. And I guess I just wondered, so is caffeine the main thing that's active in causing all these little benefits?
So when you do a coffee enema, it is really important that you're using high caffeine coffee, extremely clean coffee. So no mold, no pesticides, no mycotoxins. And the other thing is high palmitic acid. So it's the high palmitic acid and the high caffeine when absorbed into your bloodstream via the portal vein. So you need to put the coffee up your bum, your rectal vein absorbs the caffeine in the coffee through, and this in turn, internal process stimulates the liver to detoxify the glutathione production. So it's not just, you can't grab Nesquik coffee, you can't get your instant coffee out, but it's really easy to brew at home. We do it with just a plunger. You could do it over the stove, but it needs to be the really clean coffee grinds with high palmitic acid and high caffeine, boiled over the stove or in a plunger for about 10 minutes, and then you cool. And then you use the room temperature coffee to comfortably go up your other end.
Mm-hmm. Your background, you were a colon hydrotherapist, and was your first product a coffee enema?
Yeah. So I've been a colon hydrotherapist for over 15 years now. That was my first love, was colon hydrotherapy because, when I was 13, I was diagnosed with colonic inertia. So my bowel had stopped moving. And at that time, there was not a lot of research going on around gut health and diet. There was a really big gap. And there really still is today. If you were to visit your GP or your gastroenterologist, there's a pretty big gap in the knowledge there onto why my bowel had stopped moving and the underlying factors. But by the time I was 16, I basically received the diagnosis that things were not going to improve. And the only thing that I had left to do was remove 90% of my bowel.
Wow.
So, and that's at 16. I was told I'd never have children. I basically would have an external colorectomy bag. At this point, I didn't have a husband. I didn't have anyone. I was like, what do you mean? I can't have a poo bag. I'm 16. Like, I haven't even been to prom yet. And it was that moment that my parents and I were just like, we have to find something else. Like, this is not good enough. And that's how we ended up finding colonics. And the relief was life-changing because it was basically a large enema. So a colon hydrotherapy machine is basically a large enema that repeats for an hour, and you have a guided therapist that, massages your tummy and helps loosen everything up. And as soon as my body started to detoxify with the colonics, my entire life changed. Not only just relief that I hadn't felt in years because none of the chemical laxatives or any of the colonoscopies weren't showing anything. Nothing that, I was being offered by my doctors was doing anything, which is why they had told me we needed to resort to surgery, which had no guarantee anyways. But the colonics transformed my health from the inside out. And as soon as I started to release all this old waste matter, my skin cleared up. My hormonal issues went away. It was incredible. And I became so passionate. I was like, how is it this simple that I could have done this years ago and I would have bypassed all of this, years of pain and, discomfort. And
do you have a sense of why that occurred in the first place? Was there any kind of history, or do you think that was just bad luck? What went on to bring that about?
Oh, as a colon hydrotherapist now, and I'm specialized in gut health, there's so many things that were going on. From a young age, I had used a lot of antibiotics. Both of my parents are actually doctors. So I had access to a lot of over-the-counter and prescription medications that, whilst I think they were trying to help, obviously, there was little known about the effects on the gut microbiome from a lot of antibiotic use and a lot of underlying chronic stress. My diet, I grew up in America. I had the fast food, Starbucks, McDonald's diet. And it just hit a point. I had so many toxins in my body and then a lot of underlying stress. And the colon is really linked to grief, guilt, and anxiety. And it's really our control center, which is why so many people struggle with constipation. And especially in this day and age, it's getting worse and worse because we can't turn off and we feel like we're in danger, even when we get that email that really triggers us. And we're never disconnected. We're sort of never allowing our bodies to regulate. And when you're in that chronic state of fight or flight, your gut can literally shut off. And that is what happened to me, essentially. I hit this point where my body was so toxic and my nervous system just said, look, we can't do this. We don't feel safe. And then that over time becomes a habit. And I thought I was the only one. And until I became a colon hydrotherapist in my 20s, I realized how many thousands of people are suffering from the exact same thing.
So grief, guilt, anxiety. Do you feel that you were experiencing grief, guilt, or anxiety and that was disrupting the bowel, or, taking antibiotics, throwing off the bowel, creating grief, guilt, anxiety, or both?
Definitely both.
Yeah.
Definitely both. I think there's always a physical and an emotional part. And sometimes the emotional can lead to the physical. But in my case, I think the antibiotics killing off a lot of the good bacteria, plus the unhealthy diet is not feeding any of your good gut bacteria, right? So you're kind of behind the eight ball to begin with. And then you add in an environment that you're living in, especially as a teenager, where you don't have a lot of control over your own life. And you're living in this state where essentially you're acidic all the time and your body's, you're stressed out, and your body starts to hold on. And we actually see so much of this in children. There are so many kids that their constipation starts at school because whether or not they're being teased or maybe their parents are getting divorced and things are starting to go sideways and the body holds on for dear life as a protection mechanism. And I know that I am pretty stubborn, and I think my body has always done an amazing job of trying to protect me. It just came at this cost because I unfortunately just grew up in an environment where I didn't feel like I was safe to be myself. And I didn't feel like my life was in my control, which I think we're all a bit different. And I think me personally, I've always known who I was from such a young age. And I think I grew up in a box that just didn't really fit me. And I think my body almost had a reaction to that and was trying to protect me from all the stress that I was feeling around me. And it's actually really interesting. So in olden days, when you would be running from real danger or running from a bear or, you're running for your life, all of the blood flow from your digestive system flows into your arms and legs, your extremities, so that you can run faster, so that you can protect yourself. And that's when you're in that adrenal state. It's that emergency state. You're heightened. But what happens now is if we don't leave that state and we're living in these chronic states of fight or flight, the blood never comes back into the digestive system and then things start to slow. So for me, it was so many different things. And I never think it's just one thing. It's always a holistic myriad of reasons behind, why we end up with a health issue or a situation. But yeah, constipation, it's connected to all sorts of different things.
Yeah. I'm kind of connecting with an experience I had where I, at one point, took a sample of stool, sent it off to the labs, and kind of got my report card back of my microbiome. And there were certain things completely missing and certain things that really shouldn't be there, including probably some sort of fluke or parasite, of a fairly significant one, that was causing blood in my stool. And at the time, I went through a protocol which included an enema, but also included a few other steps in the puzzle. And I know that I took certain probiotics along with that protocol to kind of match what was missing to kind of repopulate. So when we do a colonic or an enema, I'd also like to kind of frame the difference between those two for those that are kind of newer to that, like why would I choose one versus the other? But when we do that, in general, we're kind of cleansing and drawing things out. And do we have to worry about the repopulation part and kind of taking in probiotics in the same way that we might, with other processes that kind of clear out the microbiome a little bit?
That's a great question. And the answer is usually yes. However, there's two steps to really looking at the gut microbiome and getting things back into balance. And detoxification is number one. So that enema, which is either your coffee enema, so that's your liver, really helps with parasites, can really help with candida, which is a yeast overgrowth. And the enema is sort of like, it's a more targeted mini colon cleanse, I would say. So an enema uses about 700 to 900 mils of either a coffee solution, or you could do a water solution, herbal solution. Whereas the colonic is the deep clean for the entire colon. So because we have, it's a connected machine, you can actually increase the water flow. You can go in and out basically for about 40 minutes. So in a couple of colonics, you can clear your entire 2-meter long bowel. And most people in their bowel are holding about, it's 5 to 7 kilos or about 11 to 15 pounds of stool.
Wow.
And if you're not going to the toilet 2 to 3 times a day and you're eating 2 to 3 times a day, there's going to be some serious buildup happening. And it takes time for that to manifest into, other issues. But it's a really great place to start with a detox if you're having any health issues.
It even kind of makes sense to me that even if, food is moving in one direction, into the mouth, through the digestive system and out the other side, that all the little folds and creases, and in this case, in the large intestine, might create places where kind of build up or like little eddies, within your digestive system where things just don't naturally move. And I think, practices like yoga and stretching and movement and gut massage and, enemas and colonics, all kind of fit into this idea of kind of cleaning your house at least every once in a while and moving things. And I know that, when I quite literally clean my house, like all of a sudden you move a piece of furniture and you just see what's kind of been building up there. Do you feel that, somebody's listening, they're like, gosh, oh my God, my digestion's sluggish, my mood's been poor, my energy is not so great. Is this for me? Is there a recommendation of like, go for the colonic? Cause that's kind of the full power, I know for me, like it was definitely a stronger sensation and a stronger process or, start there if you want to dive all in, or do you start with something a little gentler like enema just to warm up to the idea?
I think it depends, because one of the reasons I actually started the Happy Bum Co., which is, our at-home enema and detox brand, is because colonics aren't readily available everywhere. It's almost a really traditional art that, has been hidden underground for such a long time. And it's really resurfacing in the last couple of years, probably a lot to social media and people sharing their stories and alternative health practices really coming into the limelight. So if you can go have a colonic, absolutely. And if you find a clinic near you that you feel comfortable going to, because the most important thing is you feel comfortable and that you feel safe, because back to those emotions stored in the colon, if you don't feel safe and you don't feel supported, your body's not going to release anything on the table either. So you need to feel safe. You need to feel like you're in good hands. In my colon hydrotherapy clinic, that's the most important part of our job. It's just making someone feel safe and heard. And because of that, that's when the magic happens. That's when their body can let go, whether it's tears or just releases through the tube. It's a bit of everything. Now, if there's not a colonic clinic near you, which is why I ended up starting the Happy Bum Co., because when I started to share my story online about what had happened to me and then what I had, how I had really helped recover and helped to clear out my colon, and, how colonics had helped me and then how enemas had helped me, people were reaching out from all over the world. And I couldn't give them colonics because I was just in Brisbane, but I was like, hey, I can teach you how to do enemas anywhere. And it's a start, and it's something that can give you power and control over your own body at home. So anyone that's needing to detox at home can grab an enema kit, and you can easily and safely do it at home in the privacy of your own bathroom. You can do it as often as you want. If you're on a parasite protocol, you can do them every day if you're feeling crappy. Or if you're constipated, you can do an enema every day you're not having a bowel movement, because a lot of underlying health issues are due to stress, and that stress isn't just going to magically disappear. We have to find ways to support the digestive system to move the toxins out. And that's exactly why colonics and enemas go so well with yoga, with breath work, with anything that opens your detox pathways and gets your body moving, because it's all about opening up those detox pathways and supporting. It's your colon, it's your skin, it's your lungs, it's your kidneys, it's everything. So enemas are a really powerful tool for anyone, anywhere. And they have such deep benefits for your liver when you use the coffee or other herbal supplements. I can't recommend them enough, really. And if you're someone who has chronic disease and maybe you are going to the toilet regularly, but you've got an autoimmune condition, or your liver is not functioning properly, or you're having, brain fog in your skin, maybe you start with the coffee enemas to really target the liver. So It's not a one size fits all. I think you got to really just tune in and see what is what feels right to me, what resonates. Is it a colonic? Is that something that's nearby? Is that something I have access to? And is it something I feel comfortable with? Or is it, do I want to start at home? Do I want to build my confidence using enemas in the privacy of my own bathroom and see what happens and then move on to a colonic when they're available?
Mm. That probably the most powerful work I've ever done for just holistic health in terms of my physical body has been through the gut. And so I really love this area, and I've used enemas as part of that. I'm with you all the way, man. If you're not digesting your food well, or there's any sort of hangups in your digestion, top to bottom, it's definitely a powerful place to start. And it's amazing how much the science is finding is linked to great digestion and great absorption. And I'm so looking forward to getting my enema coming when you come to visit. So super stoked. Another thing, by the way, I just want to mention, I told some of the team that I was doing this podcast with you, and several of the girls were like, oh my God, they were totally fangirling about you. They were like, they use your products and they love them. So yeah, really
That
excited.
makes me
And they're
so
all
happy.
excited. Yeah, the team's super stoked. I was kind of surprised, I didn't know how many people were doing enemas, but more people than I expected apparently are doing enemas. So
Yeah.
congratulations on a brilliant business and on all the awards and all the recognition. So give me two scenarios. One person, pretty healthy, no real issues, maybe a bit of mood or maybe a bit of energy or a few of course, we can always brighten up the energy a bit here or there. And one person who might be working with something, I don't know, maybe a condition, maybe you pick a scenario that is maybe the most common, like where do coffee enemas shine the most? Like what's the biggest no-brainer condition that somebody would start using your products for? And then give me a different prescription for how you might use them when you're healthy versus working with some sort of condition.
I think the greatest gift of all, we get the awards, we do all the things, but at the end of the day, it's when someone writes in and messages and shares their story on something I've never even heard of. And they're like, your coffee enemas helped this so much. And I think because I'm a mom as well, I have a huge soft spot for the women who are trying to conceive, the families who are trying to have, kids, or the women with PCOS. There's a lot of real benefits for women and for pretty much anyone with hormonal issues doing coffee enemas. And that's a really surprising one for most people. Women going through perimenopause, menopause, fertility struggles, all of this stuff comes down to the liver and the toxins in our body. And, most of them have been spraying on spray Dove deodorant since they were, 13, and bathing in those toxic body products and cooking on nonstick pans and, wearing perfume and the makeup, and then going into work where there's, an air freshener that's blasting Febreze all day, and they don't realize that all of those little things over time are now impacting their liver and their overall toxic load, and now their reproductive hormones. So coffee enemas, I really feel passionate about that because that's a part of my story as well. I was told I'd never have children, and that was just something I believed until I started to detox and fix my liver, and then I fell pregnant naturally. So for someone who is just looking after their general well-being, and they're like, I understand that this world has a lot of toxins in it, I really want to look after myself, self-care is a priority, I would say if you've never done a coffee enema before and you've not really specified, liver detoxification as a part of one of your protocols, I would be doing 1 or 2 weeks of daily coffee enemas, if you could, to really kickstart and get rid of anything that's not supposed to be in there and really give your body a good chance to detoxify. Because we know it's not just the one-off that you do of anything. It's not that one-off gym session that gets you the abs. It's not that one colonic that clears your entire colon. It's not one acupuncture treatment. It's not one yoga session. It's being consistent. So I always believe in the beginning to be consistent for a period of time, because often we don't realize that we do have something underlying until we fix it. So most people think, oh, my energy is great. And I feel generally well. My gut feels good, until we realize after we do a detox or we change something, you go, wow, actually, I feel a lot better. I didn't realize that I was accepting, this score of 6 out of 10 because I didn't have anything to compare it to. So for someone just starting out with general pretty good health, I would do a regular coffee enema for maybe a period of 2 weeks. And then you could switch to a more maintenance of maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. But it depends on your overall toxic load. Are you a hairdresser? Are you working in a place where there's fragrance all the time? What are your exposure levels? Do you eat organic? Do you, what other detoxing are you doing in your life? Where do you live? Are you stressed? All of those things are really going to help you determine how often you should be looking after this detox pathway. Now, if you are someone with, say, a chronic illness, it's hard because everyone's a little bit different. We have a lot of people come to the Happy Bum Co. or start doing coffee enemas for cancer, for alternative cancer support, but also autoimmune conditions, chronic fatigue, hormones, and really it's a part of the equation. So just detoxing on its own isn't going to be enough. It's a part of a bigger picture, and it really depends on the severity, and it depends on your symptoms, and it depends on how you feel. If the coffee enema helps you feel really good and, you're struggling to get through the day and, you're doing all of these different things, maybe it's a period of 3 to 5 months that you do them daily. Some people do them a couple of times a day. Wow. It's very individual. Yeah, the Gerson therapy and what the work that they do at Hope for Cancer over in Mexico with Dr. Tony, some of them are doing coffee enemas multiple times a day because they have to get rid of these cancer cells, and they're trying to support the immune system naturally to fight off all these free radicals. And they have so much toxicity in the body that they just have to keep getting it out. And then they're sent home with a coffee enema kit to do them at home once or twice a day. So it's
Did Gerson include enemas?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. All right, cool.
Yeah, it's actually one of the crucial parts. It's the juicing, but it's really the coffee enema to stimulate the liver to detoxify. And, the belief around that is if you remove all the reasons you have to be unwell and all the irritants, then the body comes back into balance.
Yeah. When kind of the naysayers come to you, or people are suspicious, or I'm sure you get clients that are kind of almost, half in, half out, sort of coming through the door. What do they tend to be hung up on? I know that when I look at research, often it's almost like it seems like the contraindication is around risk of, damaging the colon. What are the things should people be concerned with, and what are contraindications? When is it not so right?
It's really interesting because at the end of the day, I love to take a really holistic view of everything. And I'm a very critical thinker, and I like to do my own research and then look at something as a whole, and I go, okay, what do I think? And most of the time, I think so much is just fear, and it's fear of the unknown. And I think enemas are an ancient part of all traditional healing forms. So, ancient India, you'll find them in Egypt, you'll find them in Chinese medicine. And enemas were even in the Merck handbook prior to the introduction of pharmaceutical laxatives in the 1960s. So at the end of the day, if you look at it from like a large scale back, enemas they're very gentle, they're gravity fed, and it's just a bit of either water, or coffee is essentially mostly water as well going into the colon. So as long as you are using some really common sense safeguards for yourself, if you're using boiling water, or if you for some reason are really sore in that area, or maybe you're already having blood in your stool or something, that might be that time where you're going to seek alternate advice and seeing what's going on in there. But for most people, enemas are very, very safe, and there's no risk of any kind of perforation from the bowel, from a little bit of gravity infused room temperature water or coffee going in. There's a lot of other things that happen in that region that are, far more questionable than,
Yes.
um,
And
and so
frictional.
usually it makes me laugh. It's generally just either an education or an agenda gap. With any kind of natural healing protocol. I mean, if everyone did colonics and enemas and looked after their colon, laxative sales would drop a lot. So
Do you think this is one of those cases where pharmaceutical interests or larger interests have kind of pushed research that, I don't know, decreases the value or negates kind of the value of enemas and colonics?
yeah, and it's really disappointing because for someone like me, and there are thousands of other people like me out there, I was failed by the medical system because I was only offered pharmaceutical options. And what my bowel really needed was something much more primal. So something that actually helps stimulate the peristalsis and to manually just remove the stool. And I think it also comes down to enemas are a lot more work for, say, a nurse to perform in a hospital as opposed to sending people home with a pill or a
A
tablet
pill,
to
yeah.
take.
Yeah.
So it's time, it's, resources, and then it's education. You have to explain how to do it. And it can be a bit confronting for people. Not everyone is ready to just go home and do an enema if they're not feeling confident or if they don't know how to do it. So that's why I feel so strongly in the work that we do in our clinic because, people come in, they're not ready to do it themselves, perhaps. They're like, I need help. I can't go to the toilet. Can you help me? And we're like, of course we can help you. But I also want to give you the tools so that you can do this at home, so that you can get relief whenever you need it.
In Queenstown, I know that to my knowledge, there's only one hydrotherapist that you can go to, and she works out of her house. You were kind of talking earlier about how not everyone has access. And I would guess most people in Queenstown wouldn't even know that this woman exists. And so it is, it's a small town. First of all, I'm sure big cities all have much better options, but here we have limited options. If you have the option of a colonic or an enema, do you think most people find it easier to do it with the assistance of a technician, or does the presence of someone else typically kind of make people more weary or unwilling in the privacy of their bathroom and alone and just kind of trying it on their own? Is that kind of more comfortable for most people?
I think it's split right down the middle.
Okay.
I think you'll find there are some people that prefer to go to someone and do it. But then there's also an added cost involved. So, it depends on the budget. It depends on the severity. If again, maybe you're someone who's struggling with cancer or autoimmune, and perhaps you are having regular bowel movements and it's something else, possibly more connected to the liver, you might be more inclined to just do a coffee enema at home. But we're also really, something I'm really passionate about with the Happy Bum Co. is making people feel confident in doing them at home themselves, because there are so many people that don't have access. So we want people to feel like, I've got this, and you share other people's testimonials. I'd love to hear, what you thought on your first, especially as a man, what were your initial reactions when, someone said, hey, you should do a coffee enema, and, what were those fears and how did they dissolve as you did the process? Was it the first time, or was it, a couple in and you started to see results? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, for me, my first colonic was with a group who was really big into wheatgrass. It was developed by the ASEANs. It's called the Optimum Health Institute, and there are a couple of them in California. And that was my first colonic. I think they started us off with saline, so yeah, just salt and water. And I mean, it was definitely, I'm a pretty comfortable guy. Like, I'm not too fussed about anything. Like, I'm not fussed about nudity and everything, but it is another level to have somebody, placing a plug into your rectum and it's a stranger you've just met and said hi to, and there you are. But I found it kind of okay. Like, to be fair, the more challenging thing for me was relaxing around the sensation of wanting to push. Like, that was actually quite difficult for me. It's like every cell in my body is just wanting to like push, and you're really just trying to relax and allow the water to fill you. So I think I wasn't a very I wasn't super tolerant in allowing myself just to fill up, because they just allow you to empty anytime you want. But the other thing I remember was, I think maybe on the third round or the fourth round, they would add wheatgrass into the mix, and they would fill you with wheatgrass. And I remember the sensation of that was like up a notch. Like it definitely took everything to another level. But I felt amazing. Like, I mean, I've never probably felt so clear and so light and so, just kind of like effervescent in my energy. And it was part of a cleanse, and we were doing other things, and we were doing diet and movement and all sorts of stuff. So I found it useful. I'm somebody who, in general, my digestion is strong, and I don't get constipated really ever. Could probably count on half a hand how many times I've been constipated in my life. So I haven't necessarily done a whole lot of enemas and a whole lot of colonics, but I've done them in different spaces. I also really clearly remember my first coffee enema, also on a retreat. We were at a place called the Golden Rock in Bali, and it was an intense cleanse, man. It was like probably the most intense cleanse I've ever done, 9 days long, and whew, full power. But I think on day 3, they set us up with a coffee enema. And again, I mean, I felt cloud 9. I was like, it was insanely good. I was like, what is this? How is this such a good thing? I mean, I felt way better after a coffee enema than I did after the colonics. I must have been feeling whatever the mix was, which was mostly coffee, but I think they also had they had kind of their own kind of herbal mix that was in there. And it was amazing. Yeah, and there was definitely a buzz to it. I felt on cloud 9. And anytime the topic comes up, if somebody's never done a coffee enema, I'm like the raving lunatic that's like, you just got to try it for the experience. Like it's next level. Yeah, stoked for another one of those.
Yeah, well, I love that. And that's really, I think, the end of the day, you just have to do it, because no one can tell you what it's going to feel like. And that's why I tell them, like, look, guys, you just have to try it and trust me. And it sounds like your body, obviously, you look after yourself so well, which is why you've responded so positively, immediately getting that, you're basically at the top of the mountain without any of the other work, where some people do an enema or, start a detox and they go down first as they're experiencing the detox symptoms. What you're describing that's the pinnacle. That's what you want. But it's also, that's the liver being targeted, whereas the colonic doesn't necessarily target the liver. Mm-hmm. So that's where, and then obviously the caffeine from the coffee gives that, the added liver detox benefits, but also the buzz of energy. And yeah, it's a pretty amazing experience.
And so it wouldn't be uncommon for someone to have a full colonic and go home and maybe feel detox symptoms, because I'm also familiar with detox symptoms in myself and of course in my clients. So is that common, that say after your first session?
Yeah. And it really depends on the person. Again, someone like you, if you've looked after yourself really well, if you're having a couple of bowel movements a day, you're not constipated, you're probably eating really well, low toxic load, done a lot of emotional work, very likely you're going to skip all of the negative detox symptoms, and you just kind of get to feel the buzz and to feel that optimum clarity when it comes from your body's quite empty. Whereas, I mean, when I had my first colonic, I was hugging the toilet bowl after, because I was
vomiting.
Oh, I was so unwell, because essentially I hadn't been to the toilet in months, and really not well for years. And then you add in all the other toxins that I'm just absorbing daily. And as soon as they start to come out and you stir them up, which is, the water stirs them up, and then your body gets excited and it's like, okay, here we go. Let's get this stuff out. So yeah, it was a wild experience, but I felt so much better once everything had come out. And I knew that was step 1. I needed to keep coming back. So I was back in there a couple days a week for months, because my condition was so severe. And it wasn't like I magically just started going to the toilet a couple times a day magically after not for years and years. So I knew this was something I was going to have to stay on top of for probably the rest of my life, managing my toxic load and making sure things were moving through. So it's really common. And I'm sure you even see this, when people come on retreat, if they're quite toxic and you remove all those toxins from the diet, maybe sugar, maybe it's caffeine, maybe it's, even just can be a work phone, there's so many different sources of toxicity that they start to come down. They have the headaches and the fatigue
100%.
and
Yeah.
and the
Every week.
enemas. Yeah, exactly. And the enemas are so powerful for that because it speeds up the detoxification process. So all of, those detox symptoms are because the bugs and the parasites and the yeasts and the organisms that you've been feeding with those refined sugars and the stress and all that are going, feed me. And when we remove that, when you're on retreat, you got to clear out those bugs and, the waste in there that's calling for that. And it makes you feel a lot better once it's gone. And I
Yeah. With
imagine,
parasites, what parasites would a colonic be sufficient or an enema be sufficient to deal with on its own? Because I know a lot of times that's done in a sort of protocol, and even within protocols, often you'll take an antiparasitic
yeah,
along with it. Are there some that it work better for, like things like Candida? Are those more easily managed with just an enema?
I always recommend coffee enemas as a part of a cleanse. So you're always going to want to have the herbal supplement support from the top down. And then the enema is going to play a really crucial role in actually removing the physical body. So it's one thing to be taking antiparasitic herbs, but if you're not going to the toilet and you're not going to be evacuating all of the parasites that you're in turn killing off, you're going to end up reabsorbing that back into your body, in your bloodstream. And the benefits are going to be extremely low as opposed to actually removing everything from the body. So it's really, again, in that sort of two-pronged approach where, we need like the Candida herbs, there's so many different things, your oregano and your clove, and there's special capsules and things that you can get, or herbal mixtures you can get for Candida. But if you're not removing that excess yeast, it's just sitting there. And a lot of people are quite stagnant. So they're not moving these things through. And the same with parasites. So the colonic can be really, really powerful to help just clear everything out as, in conjunction with another parasite cleanse. Or sometimes people don't even realize that they have parasites, and then out trots a worm. And we're like, hey, so you know how you've been biting your fingernails and you're waking at 3 a.m. every night and you've got IBS ever since you went to Bali, 4 or 5 months ago? Like, how about we do a parasite cleanse?
Yeah. I know I've had parasites multiple times. Yeah.
We all
Yeah.
have them.
Yeah.
It's just, whether or not they're sort of in check or not. And I mean, for me, I've got 3 little kids at home and, there's stress. I don't eat any refined sugar or anything that generally feeds parasites, but, it's still really important to be taking those herbs and clearing them out and doing your enemas and making sure that you're not creating a breeding ground for something you don't want in there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a little bit odd that all our cattle and sheep and, all the animals we care for, like, if you have a dog, like you probably give them a worming tablet every month or whatever, and yet as a culture, I don't think we do anything. You
No.
don't ever even get tested unless there's some major effect that you're having that you go to a doctor to get checked out. And a lot of times the doctor wouldn't even know to test for
Yeah.
parasites. It's almost, it's quite a blind spot, I'd say.
It's a huge blind spot. And I've actually just finished, we're launching our new parasite cleansing herbs this month. I've been doing a ton of research as we, gather all of our evidence and all the different ingredients and, create the product. And, it's so interesting because clove is one of the ingredients that's in there, and it's a really common parasite cleansing herb. And I always just look back to the different cultures and their ingredients and their cuisine, and Western culture just doesn't include any of these natural parasite cleansing and organism cleansing herbs that are so commonly found in other cuisines all over the world in different cultures. So, something so simple that we can add in, clove, it's a huge blind spot. And it's just so our cultures.
What do you guys do now? So, or what would you recommend for somebody who suspects they might have a parasite? Do you suggest testing to begin with, or do you just or is it just great just every few months to do your parasite cleanse protocol?
I would just do a parasite cleanse protocol. There's so many different signs and symptoms in your body that can show you. I'm a big believer in, let your body talk for you. So, yep, you can do your blood test, you can do your stool test. That's great. But your body is always changing, and there are always things that we're going to be coming into contact with. So even if you did your blood test or your stool test yesterday, what about today? And I think it's such a powerful thing to stay on top of, especially when they're natural. This shouldn't be something that's disrupting your gut microbiome. This shouldn't be something that's doing you harm. If anything, it should be a preventative measure or a precautionary measure that's going to help you, not hurt you.
Mm-hmm. Give us an overview of the products you've chosen to offer and how they work together, and who would use what.
So our entire product line is basically built around our customers, because the first product we launched was the enema kit, because I had started my colon hydrotherapy clinic and I had people coming in, and then people started to reach out from all over the world, and they're like, the colonics are great, Kyah, but I'm not going to the toilet when I get home, and I can't afford to come see you once a week or, twice a week like I like. What else can I do? And I was like, well, you could do an enema at home. And we needed a bag, and there was just nothing available out there that I was happy with. And I wanted them to feel happy about doing it, that they were supporting their body. I didn't want them to feel embarrassed or ashamed that this is something that their body was struggling with and that they needed help with. When I was a teenager, I was doing enemas, and they used to be the old hot water bottles, and you'd buy them in the back of the chemist, or you didn't feel good about using it, and you didn't feel confident in the product. And I felt like my word meant something to these people, and I wanted to be sure that what I was giving them was what I really recommended, and I felt really confident in that. So I decided to design my own. And that way I could be like, look, I know that this works, and I know that you can feel confident. And that's how the brand became what it is, because I wanted people to feel good about using it. The happy bumco, not, oh my gosh, I don't want to tell anyone I do enemas and I'm so embarrassed. And it was like, no, you do your enemas, you do you, your body needs this. And maybe it just needs it right now until you get back on your feet and we can figure everything else out. But own it, be proud, and just do what you got to do.
I love the brand. It's got a good vibe.
And then it was the coffee enemas, because then people were starting to come in with a lot of, liver issues, chronic fatigue, autoimmune, cancer, hormonal issues. And I'm like, yeah, well, coffee enemas can really help this. So then we, again, needed a coffee that I could recommend, because I had tested it myself, because I knew where it came from, because I knew it was clean and pure and was going to do what it said it was going to do. So, and then we had so many people come in with like Crohn's and colitis and autoimmune. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of research on turmeric enemas. So we created a turmeric enema blend. And then it was hormones. And then it was, hey, Kyah, like, what about this? What about this? And have you thought of this? And our product line is just grown and evolved based on what our clients needed and what they were saying. And then when you work with thousands of people every year, it's a huge data pool. And you're like, okay, well, this works and this is what you guys need. And, you do the research. And you're like, okay, well, this is the product that I think is going to match what you need. And then when it works for someone, they tell someone else, they tell 10 other people about it. And that's how it's grown. And, and we've really kept the underlying value though on, we want you to feel good about using this, and we want you to have something that you trust and that you feel confident with, because I think there's so much noise out there, and everything is real. Every story that we share is real. All the people that, we have these wild stories that come in. We had a guy who, was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and told that the only thing he could do was all these rounds of chemotherapy, which was nicknamed, the 5 feet under drug. And, and he chose a different path, and he went to the Hope for Cancer, and he did, the juicing and the coffee enemas, and eventually shrunk the tumor and healed his body enough to have the tumor removed, and he's cancer free. So I think there's so much there too, just about belief that you can heal. And I wanted products that people could believe in.
Wouldn't it be great if people would go through because I know just how intense and empowering and full power a cancer diagnosis can be. I've been with people very close to me through that process. And I think, gosh, like, I don't think most people really realize that if you start pulling on a few levers in your wellness routine, like, you can radically change the way you feel. And it's only unfortunate that sometimes we wait until something really significant happens before we start making those choices. I joke every once in a while, like when people are at the end of a retreat and they're like bouncing around like little kids having the best time of their lives. I'm like, this is the drug we want. We just want to be healthy and we want to be vibrant and we want to, feel connected to each other and to our purpose. And it's available. It just kind of takes a bit of work and it takes a bit of discomfort, and it's not the easy thing that's at the checkout at the grocery store that you can just pop in your mouth, or the pill or the whatever. It's like, it is a different path. And I sense that you and I both have this kind of interest in that particular path and that particular solution to the problems that ail us. Are there practices that synergize particularly well? I know you've touched on movement in there, but when you're kind of sending somebody home from the clinic, maybe they can't come back to you. Are there just other things outside of, say, the product line? Is there like a little sequence of things that you usually recommend to people?
There's a lot of things. And I think part of a really healthy self-care routine is incorporating all different things and keep moving. But I mean, infrared saunas, everything about your retreats are things that I would recommend. And that's, I think, why we do align so closely. It's the movement, it's breath, it's anything that opens your detox pathways. If you can sweat, if you can do a sauna, if you can dry brush, do some lymphatic drainage, even while you're holding your coffee enema. If you've ever watched the Happy Bum Co. Instagram, you see us with our little legs up the wall. And there's so many things. You could be listening to a breathwork track. You could be listening to meditation. You could be having the red light shine on you at the same time. You could be lying on an acupressure mat. You could have some yoga props under you and doing a heart opening pose. There's so many different things that you can incorporate so easily that just help to increase your chi in your body and get things flowing, because that's the whole purpose of the enema and a detox, is to allow space for things to either move through that you don't need anymore, and to make space for the things that do, and to cultivate that health inside on a whole level. So the detox is just a tool to remove what's no longer serving you. So anything that you can pair with that has the same goal, or perhaps is the rebalance, maybe it's making that beautiful juice or electrolyte, or sitting in the sun with your matcha after you do the enema and just taking some breaths in the morning sun, all those things. It's simple. I'm simple. Health is simple. Life is simple. And it's just, I think, intentionally moving through it and understanding why you're doing what you're doing, not just doing it. The hardest clients we always have that come into the clinic, or people that are doing coffee enemas, are only doing it because someone else told them to. Yeah. I really believe that, to be successful and to get the benefits and to really make that transition into a healthy lifestyle, or that next step in your health journey, you have to understand why you're there.
Mm-hmm. Have you had, I guess, either experiences or revelations or insights or particular moments in your life where you were able to be inspired to do the work and make the change? Or what's the last thing in your life, most recent kind of big shift in your life, in your personal wellness protocol?
I always say I was blessed to become unwell so young, because I feel like it's the silver lining. I wouldn't be here today if I had just had a normal childhood and hadn't become unwell, because I wouldn't have the understanding. I was on my healing journey when I was 17. And so by 21, I was light years ahead of what I felt a lot of people around me were. And I was really deep diving into like, why am I here? Why me? What is it that is causing this? And when you do that kind of work, you come out the other end and you're like, I understand. I understand where I've come from. I understand why I had to go through that. And then this is what I'm going to bring into the world because of it. And I wanted to help people who had felt just like me. And I think in going through that, I think I just took on a lot of responsibility from a young age because I became a young business owner and I became a mom. And I was so invested in my health that I was doing every little thing right because I knew what the alternative was. The alternative was sickness. And I didn't want that because I value my freedom. And when you're sick, you're not free. And so I spent so long and I was getting, it takes time to get all of your habits just right so that they're autopilot. And then, I had my husband come into my life and I'm like, okay, well, how does this work with you? This is how I eat. This is how I live. Are you going to align with that? And, luckily he's like, absolutely. So then it's like, you kind of go on, and then you have a family and you fall pregnant and you're like, okay, how does a kid work into this? How does pregnancy work into this? And I think for me, when you become a business owner and a mom and a bit of a figure in your community, it's really easy to become very rigid in what you do because there's always people looking to you for things. They want to look up, okay, well, what's Kyah doing? Like, how would Kyah do this? Or what are you eating? And what are you doing? And I think I've had my last baby. So I'm 3 kids down and,
Congratulations.
we've decided that we're complete. And I feel like in the last sort of, year, I've had this really big shift in that I can invite a lot more flexibility in and I can invite a bit more fun and a little bit less, rigidness. And, you don't have the sleep schedules and this and that. And it's actually really important. Human connection and fun and playfulness and letting your hair down every once in a while. So I think for me, it's the most important thing that I've sort of pivoted in my wellness journey over the last 12 months is even just allowing myself to come to a retreat like yours and allowing myself some time and some space and some solo work again and a little bit of just fun and human connection just for me. So I do the eating, that's all on autopilot, but it's amazing the emotional aspect and the connection aspect there's so many studies in the blue zones that show just how important that is as well. That's what I'm sort of inviting in this year. And that's been the biggest shift for me.
Yeah, cool. And those of you who might be interested, Kyah's coming to visit us August 17th, popping over to join us on retreat. And certainly if you're interested in this topic, that would be an epic time to try out maybe perhaps your first enema. What would the optimal 6 days of Happy Bumco be?
Well, I would absolutely love to teach you all things coffee enemas. That is obviously my deep dive passion. So I can teach you guys how to do them, how to set up, how all of the, the physical, but then also what to expect. If you're really keen, let's do one every day. If you're not and you just want to try it once or twice, go for it. I am not about judgment. There is no right or wrong. It's about doing what feels right for you. But I would absolutely encourage you to try it on those first couple of days that we're there, because then if you want to ask questions and if you want to get some advice on, maybe the sensation or how to hold it better, I'm there. And I think as anything, practice makes perfect. Your first coffee enema is going to be whatever it's going to be. You might forget to clamp the hose and it might go everywhere. And, it's just, let's just take it from step one. And if you want to do them every day, I'll be there doing them every day and we can go through it together and have it be a bit of a, community talking point, a retreat talking point.
Is there an ideal time during the day, like morning, evening? Does it matter?
I love mine in the morning. I think it's a great kickstart to the day, but you can actually do them anytime because coffee enemas are actually great for your parasympathetic nervous system. So to calm you down, my husband often does them before bed when the kids are in bed asleep and you just have that bit of time and it can provide a really good night's sleep as well. But for your first one, I'd say probably maybe mid-morning, early morning, mid-morning.
So the caffeine, while it's an active ingredient, it's not stimulating the same way it would if you drank a cup of coffee.
It's so different. And a lot of people ask, I actually don't drink any caffeine in my normal life. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink energy drinks, no kind of caffeine since I was about 17. Coffee enemas don't affect me in that way at all. You just feel very sharp and very clear. But if you do one in the evening as your body is winding down, I generally feel very relaxed and you just sort of drift off to sleep. So they can actually be an amazing tool for mental health as well, which can be really surprising.
Yeah, I believe it.
Hmm.
I believe it that is all connected. Do you have a connection to spirituality?
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah, whether we know it or not.
Yeah, I think it's almost whether you realized it or not. And I think our connection to spirituality changes as we continue on our path. I think if you would have asked me that question 10 years ago, it would have been so different to now. And I think for me, it really just comes back to aligning with my purpose and trying to just sit back and feel why I'm here and what I'm here to do. And I always try to go with the flow. And I don't mean easygoing. I mean, I'm usually called in different directions and pulled in different directions. And I like to sit and feel like, why is the universe telling me to do this? Why does this keep showing up for me in my life? And I think it comes down to that connection to source. And I like to put my 2 feet on the ground, bare feet, and I just sit there and I just close my eyes. I'm like, okay, what is this? What am I being called to do? And I mean, a lot of people ask me, they're like, how did you create this brand? And how do you have 3 kids? And I don't really know. It just flowed. It came to me and it keeps flowing. I just listen. I think so much of the time we're so shut off and maybe we live in this should be, could be. And I don't subscribe to that. And I don't know. I listen and I see what comes up and I feel like we're all shown the way if we listen. And I feel
also
like
really
we're
love
part of something bigger.
Yeah, you were kind of describing like a sequence of how an enema can kind of exist in your routine. And I was really kind of connecting with and picturing that your enema can be like a period of almost like stillness where you don't have to achieve anything and you can just lay there and you can kind of just be moving through this process in a really simple way and then enjoying a cup of tea, and just having a little bit of a break. And I know personally, I really feel closer to spirit and closer to purpose and closer to clarity the more I slow down. So what a great opportunity to slow down.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think the busier our life becomes, the more important slowing down is and the more we value it. So yeah. And we're just this little piece in such a big world and just appreciating that. I'm just happy to be here most days.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, you and I hit it off the first time we met, and I've enjoyed getting to see you wherever we get to see each other in the world. So, Kyah, thank you so much for being a light and bringing delight. And I really look forward to seeing you in August down here at Aroha. And yeah, keep doing your good work. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so excited to come join you. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Okay, friends, hope this episode left you feeling a little lighter, a little clearer, and a lot more curious about what your body might be ready to let go of. Thank you to Kyah for her courage, clarity, and humor, and for reminding us that healing doesn't have to be sterile or shameful. It can be empowering, embodied, and even a little fun. If you're ready to explore more, Kyah will be joining us on retreat this August 17th. Come curious, leave transformed. Until next time, be gentle, go deep, and stay connected. Enjoy.